I think that keyword autonomous is going to be like the foundation of this discussion, right? Because I don't want people thinking we're just going to basically upload ourselves into everybody else's cloud. We're actually going to be using technology to improve our lives. That's like the focus of this discussion anyway. So let's go straight to your setup now, right? Like in the intro, I said that you're the most connected man on earth. And that's a quote, I think, from Mashable, because you were featured there because you're not connected through networks, you're connected through technology. Your website talks about there's over 700 sensors, apps, applications, and so on. So can you just talk through quickly your setup?
Yeah.
Or quickly,
it's
like
700. Yeah. Can I just give you a 2-minute background on how I ended up here in 2021 with this moniker?
Yes, please.
So when I turned 40 in 2008, I was 320 pounds. I was chain smoking. I was on all sorts of antidepressants and anti-anxiety pills. It was overwhelming. I'll be honest with you.
And for the listeners out there of the audio podcast, he is not 320 pounds anymore. He's very much in shape.
I'm very much in shape. And it was hard because, becoming 40 and having, I was relatively successful at work, but I had a lot of things that just weren't going well. And it dawned on me one day when looking through my internet history, I think I was probably clearing it so I didn't get in trouble for something. Why don't I know as much about me as my browser? So this idea came to me in 2008 that I would write a little code that would take any time I picked up my phone, logged into my browser, sent an email, wrote a document, anything I did, it would take that data and move it someplace where I could see it. So this is step one, right? To autonomy, just finding yourself, right? It wasn't until about 2012, 2013, I was at a conference and there was a person sitting behind me and they were a writer. I didn't know it. He saw my calendar. Like, what's all these appointments were automatically being created. He was like, what is happening on your calendar? I'm like, it's a script. Anytime I do anything with technology or anytime anyone does anything to me, like someone likes something on Facebook, it updates my calendar. He said, why? I said, I need to know what's going on in my life. And you would have thought I was speaking like another language, right? And we didn't have all the tools we had today, like the screen time to tell you what you were doing. But he was fascinated by this. So literally within a month or two, I was being interviewed by Bloomberg, and that was 2013. Then I was in Wired. The Mashable thing didn't happen until 2014. Cover of Business Week in 2014. It was just so rapidly that what happened. And the first person ever used most anything was actually the BBC, and they called me the most surveilled person in the world. It wasn't until I think it was Mashable or someone else changed it to Connected, and then ever since then, Google's owned my life as far as my terms. But what does that mean today? All right. So is that an okay background?
Yeah, that's a great background. Yeah, but just to confirm, you started by putting create a script that anytime something happened, it updated your calendar. So I'm assuming your calendar was very busy.
Thousands of appointments. And if you just Google Chris Dancy's calendar, it's thousands of appointments, every single day. And at one point I color coded them so I could make more sense. So days where I had behaviors that weren't as aligned with where I wanted to be, those were in red, behaviors that were in green. So, it started making sense to me. And, in Google, you can have multiple calendars. You can have a personal calendar, you can have a business calendar. So I just had lots of calendars on this Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like everything got put into a bucket. It made sense to me. Nowadays, when I do a lot of talks at universities, I consult for a lot of big businesses, everyone from Bear to Google. People look at it and go, "Of course, why wouldn't you do that?" And the other thing about calendars is they're universally understandable. Alex, I could share my calendar with you right now, and you'd tell me exactly what type of person I am. Right? So doctors want to know how you spend your time. Well, it's in your calendar, right? So that evolved 2012, 2013, 2014 to like sensors, like all these different sensors, like respiration sensors, sensors that measure electricity in your arm, sensors that measure when you're talking, what you're saying, blood pressure sensors, right? Sensors for actually checking your blood sugar, pulse oximetry, right? Everyone's talking about pulse ox now in the age of COVID, right? Well, I've been on pulse oxing myself, just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sensors. But what I did in 2013 was I started counting, well, how many things are watching me? And I say sensors, devices, applications, and services because they're different, right? You can have a device, a phone, with lots of sensors.
Okay.
Right? Lots of sensors in there. You can have an application that talks to a lot of services. Microsoft Word talks to the Microsoft service to host your documents. So right away, just using your phone to type a letter on Word, you're into 8 things. Now, that usually people are like, what do you mean? Well, you're talking to Word, you're talking to Word Cloud, you're using Apple's iOS, Inside that, you've actually got the accelerometer watching when you're walking. You've got the ambient light sensor watching how bright it is. You've got the sound sensor, which is, and to them watches now, you're not
Yeah.
looking at your phone anymore, checking for these sorts of things. So when I started calculating it, God, one of the earliest numbers was like 700 things. And any day, 700 things were watching me or on me or keeping track of things, writing to my calendar. Today, that number is tens of thousands of things, right? And that, by the way, that's not me. That's most people.
Oh, so tens of thousands of things are tracking people already.
Most people every single day, right? Once you pull in,
what are some examples of that, just quickly? So what are some examples of things that?
Yeah, so let's break it down so it's easier, because it's easier to put these kind of numbers in buckets.
Yes.
So basically, you've got biological things watching you. So there's all sensors in your phone that tracks the biology of things. The phones do sleep now by default, Android, iPhone. You've got behavioral things like screen time, simple things like that, spending, credit cards, etc. And then environmental things, right? Now, on top of that kind of personal stack, environmental, biological, behavioral, you've got a societal stack. So you've got things like commerce, traffic cams, civic sensors and data and demographics. And then on top of that, you've got, besides local, you've got national. And then of course you've got global, everything from air quality to, carbon emissions, right? Yeah. So that kind of pyramid of data is huge. And when we think about it, a lot of times people get like, oh my gosh, where would I even start? And I go, calm down. Like, you asked for it all, so I'm gonna give you it all right now. Let's just be simple.
Yeah.
Let's start with something simple. Your steps, that goes in a biological bucket. Your screen time, that goes in a behavioral bucket. Your spending, that goes in a behavioral bucket. You're not sleeping well. That could be the temperature and humidity, light and sound in your house. That goes in an environment bucket. So starting to make sense. I've got diagrams for this sort of thing too.
Yeah, no. This is good.
So when I teach, I do a lot of stuff for a lot of universities. I teach a lot of doctors, actually. I teach a class, if you have a patient who's unresponsive and you've got a phone you can get into, how to kind of basically do an autopsy on what that phone's been doing. And people just start to get it. They start to slowly go, oh, that's my life. But remember, because it's been put together for you, like iOS and Android, they put your life together for you. They came with certain default apps. But back in the day, these default apps were simple. Like the browser was a default app. That's all you had to worry about in 1995. Which browser did you pick? Then when I was like, okay, well, which email client and which browser? Okay, which email, which client? You know what I mean? So it kind of slowly, but today, which entertainment provider, which TV provider, which automobile provider. I mean, your phones are linked to our cars in full time. Tesla's nothing but a phone on wheels, right? So I think I was a little bit early to the game and figuring out how these systems work together. But for me, it just makes sense. And I try to help people understand their lives, especially when it comes to business and personal, because there's this balance. Like, well, what, are you doing enough of this? Sometimes health goes out the window and then your relationships fall off the train and, then your business falls apart and then your friends leave you, so it's like, it's a lot of systems there.
Okay. And we're going to get to a few of those. And there's a few comments that you post that you just said, which I'd like to unpack, but quickly, you record everything into something called the Airtables, right? So could you just explain to people that don't understand actually how Airtables work, like what they are, and why you use them?
Yeah. So historically, as we just mentioned, all my data was in my Google Calendar for the longest time. But then in 2014, 2015, I moved over to an aggregator system called Gyroscope. This is a book from Gyroscope. And what it would do is it takes similar information I was put in Google, but it would literally keep it in their source. And this company's still around today, and you can still get these books to see your life today. But what I found with Gyroscope, again, like a lot of these problems, was Gyroscope was deciding what was important. Right. So it's like Apple's deciding what's important to see. If you ever look at Apple Health Kit or Google Fit, like they're deciding what health things are important. Now you can favorite some of them, but they're still deciding for you.
Right.
For me in 2017, I was searching for a CRM. I was not trying to fix my data logging problem. I was like, how do I fix my CRM? And I, as a small business owner, had invested in a lot of time into research into CRMs. And every time I found one I kind of liked, it just, I had all the bells and whistles, but then again, it felt like somebody else's processes were being forced on me. This is how you would do CRM. This is not how I do CRM. So someone suggested I look at Airtable. What is Airtable? Well, that's the $1 million question. It's a $10 billion company with the $1 million question. At its essence, Airtable is a spreadsheet on steroids. That's the term they always say, right?
Right.
Ultimately, it looks like a spreadsheet, But unlike a spreadsheet, you can link to other spreadsheets. So imagine you've got 3 spreadsheets. You've got your household budget. You've got another spreadsheet of all the things you've ever bought for your house. And you've got a third spreadsheet of all your credit cards. Airtable would allow you to link the thing you bought to like the credit card you use to where it lives in your house. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So each row in a spreadsheet isn't a row, it's a record. And I'll give you an example of this right now. So I started playing around with it for Airtable to build a simple CRM. And then I realized, wait a minute, Airtable is allowing me to externalize the values I have for my customers and my life. Why would I stop at my CRM? Why wouldn't I do this for my home, my family, my belongings, my health? Why wouldn't I do this for my planning? Why wouldn't I do this for my mental health? Why wouldn't I do this for my tasks, my projects? And since they're all related, that's when I thought to myself, aha, this isn't a business tool. This is a life tool. And I started working on it.
Okay. So just with Airtable, because I haven't used it that much personally myself, how hard is it to get into? To start to use?
So simple. I've got a couple of videos over on my website. I don't have any simple how-tos, but there's a bunch of simple how-tos. But I always tell people, if you've heard me speak and you liked anything you heard, go to Airtable, get a free account, create one table for you, your spouse, and your business. Like there's usually three people in every relationship. You can add your dogs and kids in later, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And then just put down everything you need to know. Your name, your address. Make it like an emergency safety record. Mm-hmm. Honey, if anything ever happens to me, go to this Airtable. Everything is right there. Everything you need to know. All the phone numbers, emergency information. Just build like a super driver's license. If you like it, then say, okay, now we know who we are. Let's start adding on to that. And I can give you a demonstration of kind of how I thought about that, if you'd like.
Well, yeah, sure. But we can get to that part. But then, so we start by creating a few Airtables. We put some information in. It seems like based on what you're tracking, you've automated quite a lot of these. This information that goes into Airtables, right? What is the integration tools, or kind of how did you integrate the data from all the different sources into Airtable? Like, is that through something like Zapier, or is that something else?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's funny because people get so excited, and I love I can feel your excitement about this because the biggest challenge with Airtable isn't automation or all the cool things you can do with it. It's like the biggest problem is you can do anything, and like everything in life, when you can do anything, you do nothing. That's just like life 101. If you can do anything, you will do nothing. Right? It's only in constraints do we actually start to find our power and our autonomy. So I always tell people, if you build your Airtable, just like I said, you can just build a super record. I'll show you mine in a second of everything about you. You can start to add on to it. So automations, let's just keep this real simple. So let's just say you've now built a table about Alex or Alex's business.
Simple one.
You want to build something really simple like automation. First thing I would do is build another table, and I would call this table journal. Just something simple, or interactions. I like interactions too. That table is not going to be anytime you send an email or schedule an appointment, it's going to automatically create a record. Now, why? Let's talk about why. So we know Alex exists, and we know he's sending emails, and he's producing shows, and he's got all sorts of things, but those are all kind of interactions. It's you talking out to the world. Most of the interactions we do digitally today are calendar appointments and emails. Those are the two biggies, right? So when you do those two things, they need to be linked to something. Well, first we know they're linked to Alex, right? Let's say Alex and Web Profits, right? Maybe they're linked to Web Profits. Web Profits is not Alex, even though you could get confused at times. They are separate. Web Profits doesn't buy coffee, right? Alex buys coffee.
They're separate things.
You're feeling me, right? But you got to think about it that way. A lot of entrepreneurs don't. They'll try to I'm my brand. Well, no, you're not Wonder Bread. You're a human who has a business. So let's keep them separate.
Great.
So now you've got this interactions table. So what's great about Airtable is there's a really simple, again, automation built right in. You just go in and say, I want to link my calendar to this Airtable. Then when you do it, it says, anytime a calendar appointment is created, what do you want to do? So you just say, the date created is the date of the interaction. The title is the title of the record. You know what I mean? So it's simple mapping. You don't even need to use Zapier. You don't even need to use Zapier.
Okay.
Right away, you have an automation of every email you've sent and every calendar appointment you have, at least in a way you can sort it. Next thing you do, let's just go one step and we'll stop.
Sure. Please. No. Well, we'll see if we'll stop. Let's see what the next step is.
Next. So we know we've got a backward flow to Alex. And by the way, no one's ever asked me to explain this. So you might have like a real hit show on your hand. You've got an upward flow to things happening.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
but
Things that
what are those?
to-do list software.
Well, yeah, things. No,
Things.
not that. I mean, things happen like emails and calendar appointments.
Oh, things.
But
Okay, cool.
what are they happening to? Right. So you might want to have a table called organizations, because you usually send email and make appointments with businesses. Now, most people say, well, I send emails and things and schedule appointments with people. But yes. We'll talk about people in a second, right?
Yeah.
Those people work for people.
Got it.
Right?
Yeah.
And those people move from creative care. So right away, let's just say you've got an email to Chris Dancy. You've got CMMDF, right? So you've got a company called CMFD. That's my company name.
Yeah.
You've got an email, a record out here for that. You've got an email on this calendar appointment today. I can show you ours, you and me, even though you didn't know you and I had a relationship.
Sure.
Coming back to you, right? Now, I might email you at some point in the future and say, Alex, I loved when you told me about that coffee company down the street. What was that? That's nothing to do with Web Profits. So right away, that email comes in, right? So linked CMFD comes in, and it's not linked to email, but now it's linked to Web Profits. It's linked to you.
Yeah, sure.
So right away, you can see your life in your calendar and your
Three separate
communications.
tables. Is that three separate tables?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Simply.
Got it.
Now, if you want to do, you can add a people table. I have a people table because I
Sure.
do believe people are people, right? But
Yeah.
people move from businesses, right? So now you've got, us, I call it the entity table. You've got the interactions or journal, and then you've got an organization and a people table. From there, you literally, Alex, can do anything, because your entire world starts to filter through there. Now, my system's a little bit different. I'll be honest with you. The thing I loved about my system was I had this entities table, right? Me, my spouse, everything. But I didn't want my entire life being connected to the world. I wanted my entire life connected to my values. We'll talk about those in a minute, right? And those values create moments in my life, and those which are in a timeline. And from there, it's linked to the tasks journal. Remember, we talked about journal,
Yes.
projects and goals. And then I reach out to the organizations and people. So someone sending me an email would come in through this bucket. They're either an inbox. It's something I'm going to record because I need to remember it. It's going to turn into a task. That task could be linked to a project. If it's significant enough, it's tied to a timeline. But does it get to me? Well, if it doesn't meet one of my 5 values, it doesn't. So we'll talk more about this in a second, because I think from a business standpoint, this might be a little bit too much for some people. But I find a lot of business people today are starting to struggle with, how am I spending my time? And I also say, if you haven't said what your values are, you won't spend your time. It'll be spent for you.